Anacortes, Washington. Population 16,681. A city full of local businesses, docked boats, and extraordinary views. However, underneath all of that is a story. A rich history with more connections to the modern day than you would think. Today, we'll be showing you 5 of those historical spots that both tourists and locals can check out while learning a little bit more about the history behind this town. Our first stop today isn't a building at all, but rather the Anacortes Museum's largest artifact, the W.T. Preston. Let's go check it out.
While it was in use, what was the W.T. Preston itself used for?
Well, the W.T. Preston was designed and used as a snag boat, and that was to establish and maintain navigable channels in the rivers of western Washington. So it worked in the Anacortes, Skagit County area, but other places in the Puget Sound area. And it provided safe passage routes for little boats that were carrying people to and from their homes and work before the transportation system, the railroads and roads caught up.
How does it relate to the culture of the city?
Anacortes was part of the area that was serviced by the Preston, but it was kind of, say, more of a Skagit County use that was the most important function.
Do you happen to have any interesting facts or little tiny tidbits about the Preston?
It's the third of 3 boats, and this is the first steel welded plate boat, which was state-of-the-art in 1939. It's 165 feet long and 35 feet wide. It weighs 494 tons. It'll work in 2.5 feet of water, so very shallow. It's a flat-bottomed steel barge, and it lifts 70,000 pounds.
What are some of the reasons that people from Anacortes should come and check out the W.T. Preston?
Well, first of all, it's a National Historic Landmark, and there aren't very many National Historic Landmarks in Washington. Secondly, it's a really unique boat. This is the third of 3, and there weren't any more after the Preston, so it's really a part of history of western Washington and the Anacortes area. You're looking back at 100 years. When people walk in the doorway, I always tell them to look to your right because you're looking back 104 years.
Our next spot is actually much closer than you'd think. And if you've been to one of our Saturday morning farmers markets, you probably already know what we're talking about. Originally built in 1911, the Great Northern Railroad Depot is now known as the Depot Arts and Community Center. If you're going to the Preston on a Saturday morning, you'll most likely want to stop by the Depot's plaza and enjoy the farmers market, with vendors selling all kinds of treats and handmade goods. The depot itself also has 3 main areas, which locals can rent out for special occasions, such as weddings or art exhibitions. There's almost always something going on here, so if you're looking to take part in the community of Anacortes, this should be your first stop. The Olson Building opened up as the Skagit Saloon back in early 1902. But the shops currently residing here are far less seedy than their 20th century counterparts. The Olson Building sits on the corner of Commercial Avenue and 3rd Street. With it originally opening as the Skagit Saloon back in 1902, the 3 businesses on the first floor are probably the furthest thing from the building's roots. We spoke to Nick and Evie, the owners of a local record store and current tenants of the Olson Building.
So how do you guys feel about being tenants of the Olson Building?
We love it. We moved in about 2.5 years ago and we immediately felt at home here. The building suited our aesthetic, and the general feeling on the block is that this is the most Anacortes block in town, and I know that the historical significance of the building and the block really draws a lot of people.
How do you feel that the Olson Building is a part of Anacortes culture?
It's really interesting because there's such a wide swath of people that come here. It's not segregated or gentrified. Everyone is welcome on this block.
An immediate draw to people who are both from here and just visiting. I think that this block has a unique enough aesthetic because of the buildings and because of the businesses in those buildings that even just somebody driving by might be tempted to get out of their car and check it out because you don't see buildings like this that often.
What is your guys' opinion on the debate over the preservation of the building itself?
We feel like the building is very valuable, and in fact it's being underutilized at the moment. The entire upstairs floor is completely vacant, and then a good chunk of the basement below. I feel like with a proper vision, this whole city block could be well utilized and draw a lot of people here, potentially provide some housing. So we think it's very valuable. We
Not to mention that you have several long-standing businesses as champions of this block and this project. You know, like, we want to be involved, and in fact, like, I think all of the tenants of the Olson Building have done a decent amount of work to their spaces themselves. Put in new electric and sheetrock, and you know, this is a basically new space. Using that as like a launching point to say, like, look, there's potential in these spaces, and you know, I think that people walking in here, I often comment on how, you know, beautiful the space is.
Coslin Park is one of the calmer spots in the city, with it having been nestled inside of the Old Town community of Anacortes for almost a century. The block that Coslin Park sits on was bought in 1903 by the same company that built the depot, under the one condition that the park would be named the Great Northern Park for at least 10 years. Considering that doesn't roll off the tongue easily, it's understandable why the town chose to rename it in honor of Harry Leon Cosland, a resident of Anacortes who died in the line of battle during World War I. And that brings us to the last stop of the day, the Anacortes Museum. Originally the historic Carnegie Library, the Anacortes Museum is home to a wealth of information and history about Anacortes, everything from Bobo the Gorilla to the Wilson Hotel. If you're looking to check out more spots around Anacortes, be sure to grab one of these pamphlets, available at the museum and various other city buildings around Anacortes. And hopefully we encourage you to explore more of your island getaway.